For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope and a future. Famous words from Jeremiah 29:11 that I'm sure many of you recognize and have heard before, given in a variety of different contexts, from greetings cards and posters to sentiments when folk are unwell, or when jobs haven't gone as we'd hoped, or things just aren't quite happening in life as we might anticipate or expect them to. Words that are so quickly and so readily shared. But yet, at least in my experience, they often don't really match. They don't really match reality. What's the underlying sentiment that we're often trying to pass on with such a verse? That don't worry about how things are at the moment. In time, things will work out the way that you want them to. That they might not be going quite so well in the present, but give it a year or two, give it some time, and things will all work out well in the end. But in reality, things don't always seem to work out well in the end, at least not in this mortal life. We all know stories, sad stories of good people for whom life did not go or end as well as we might have hoped. What do those words mean to them? Particularly if they are God-fearing, Bible-believing Christians who really have their heart and soul in all that is Jesus, and yet still life doesn't quite work out as you might hope. Are these empty words a broken promise of God? Or is the problem our understanding of them? An understanding which actually is one that comes across time and again as we come to Scripture. We're going to explore that just a little bit today. So I'm just going to read a little more from Jeremiah 29. After Babylonia has become the strongest nation for 70 years, I will be kind and bring you back to Jerusalem as I have promised. I will bless you with a future filled with hope, a future of success, not of suffering. You will turn back to me and ask for help, and I will answer your prayers. You will worship me with all your heart, and I will be with you and accept your worship. Then I will gather you from all the nations where I have scattered you and return you to Jerusalem. These are verses spoken not to individuals, but to an entire nation. A nation who is about to be ripped up from everything that they know. I don't know if you can imagine the fear and the horror of what exile would really be like. But just imagine for a second that the biggest bad on our current world stage has come in, conquered our entire nation, and taken us as the people of the UK and scattered us to the wind. All flung different parts of the world, to places maybe where we don't speak the language, where we don't know the culture, given jobs and tasks that we didn't ask for, possibly even forced into hard labour or separated from friends and family, forced into an entirely different reality from the one that we have now, and told you have no choice, this is your life. That was exile. That was what God's people were facing. And that is the context that Jeremiah speaks God's words to them. Words of hope, of purpose, of promise, and of future. There's something important that I think we often forget when we read Scripture, that the vast majority of the yous that we find in the Bible are plural. Not necessarily spoken to an individual, but more often than not spoken to a group, a gathering, a people. But yet, at least in my experience, what we tend to talk about in church of faith is a very me-centric faith. It's about me and my relationship with God. And don't get me wrong, our individual relationships with God are very important. But our perspective always must be bigger than just us, than just our comfort. I think think it speaks to something of where we're at as Christians when we take a verse spoken to an entire nation cast into exile and make it about our own comfort. That's not what's going on here. God is inviting his people in the midst of hardship and uncertainty to remember him. To remember that he is still at work, even when they struggle to see it, that he is still present with them where they are and working towards a future that he is beckoning them as a people to. That is true for us as Christians. Life in the immediate around us may not always work out as we hope. It may not even end in this mortal coil as we hope, but yet God is still at work, still moving, still shaping a plan that stretches from one side of eternity to the other. A plan that we are invited to be part of. It's not that we bolt God onto our plan, but rather that we step into his, going as he calls us, moving as he moves us, with a perspective that looks up from the immediate around us to the people that we see every day around us in our community, beyond that to the needs and the struggles of people in our nation, to the sin that is so deeply infected who we are, and to the God who is working in the midst of all of it to bring about good, to bring about hope, and to bring about salvation. A perspective that sees Jesus walking amongst us and moving things towards the plans of God. So I invite you, as you come again to these words from Jeremiah, to see them not necessarily as a personal comfort that life will always go as we hope it to, but rather to see them as an invitation to the plans and the purposes of God. To trust that even when things don't work out as we might hope they would, that God is still present, still moving, and still shaping all of time and eternity to the way that he desires it to be.